I'd like to, I see that people are leaving, but I nevertheless want to call upon the people who participated in preparing this plan. We worked for months on it. I just want to call upon Nina Baruch Sharvit, Sima Shine, Dr. Oded Eran, Kobi Michael, Dr. Anat Kurtz, Tzipi Israeli, Kim Lavi, Shlomo Brom, Brigadier General, and other people who are not here this evening, Gidi Sher, and Asaf Orion, they were abroad. This entire group took part in preparing this plan. We open the floor for Q&As. If you have any question you want to ask anybody, and the people are going to give you the answers. Although Gaza wasn't mentioned almost, maybe in a footnote, but not in the plan, I would like to hear your response, because Israel cannot avoid making a decision. Are we interested for Gaza to be a separate entity from the West Bank, or to bring back the status quo ante, that it is part of Judea and Samaria? Because any arrangement, any solution, final, interim, without Gaza, it is conditioned on this decision. There are all sorts of possibilities to cope with the Gaza. Okay, ask your question. Kobi, do you want to answer this question maybe? I can try. On principle, I don't like this terminology of solutions, because it creates a sense that there are like formula that you can use. Udi said that as far as we understand, and I think we all agree on that, Gaza is a kind of problem without a solution. I think what's happening in the Gaza Strip is not just an internal Palestinian issue, it's a reflection of the regional context. It's not just Fatah and Hamas, there are all sorts of other forces there that have various interests, and they use the Hamas and the Palestinians and the Gaza Strip as a kind of leverage or a playground. And we do not identify any feasibility of the PA going back to really effectively rule the Gaza Strip. I also don't identify any high feasibility, if at all, for reconciliation between Fatah and Hamas. And that's why we have to see the Hamas or the Gaza Strip as a political entity that stands alone. And we have to develop strategies against it, which is different than the strategy that we developed vis-à-vis the West Bank. You have to know that this strategy is one that is in tension with the other one, with the West Bank, but we have to find a way to live with those tensions. But I don't think it's going to be right to try to reconnect or to impose a connection of the Gaza Strip to the West Bank in the conditions of today. I don't think they're going to change in the near future. Another question? My name is Emmanuel Shachaf. I'm chairman of the Federation Movement. It seems to me that there's a continuation here of the occupation. I heard that IDF is going to be in the area. What does it mean? So what? We continue the status quo in a more upgraded way? It's the same thing again. Anybody wants to relate to that? Pnina? I think that in this plan, we relate to things that were said by the speakers. We don't have a presumption to end the occupation and to leave the horizon open and eventually reach some sort of a solution that ends the control of the occupation. But we focus on what do we do in the meantime. You're right. The characteristics of control are there. But the idea is to take steps now that will enable us to separate eventually. The basic question is if we want to be connected or separate. Separate. If we talk about Bennett's vision, that we're going to remain there and continue to control and occupy forever, or do we want, I don't know if to annex, but I don't know exactly what kind of solution, or we want to separate. If we want to separate, it doesn't mean that in step one, if there's no agreement, we're going to give up the security control. But we will take steps that will prevent and will enable separation in the future. Thank you. Hello? I think this gentleman here. No, you need a mic because we don't hear them otherwise. Three, not points, questions. Don't give us points, give us question. First of all, also in researches that says that 60% of the population support two states, but that, and 40 are against. What about the 20%? Can we focus on them and ask them a question, what's going to happen after a Palestinian state? If you say, why not two states? Most people say, when you said two states, I thought you meant two states for Arabs and one state for us. We're talking about identities and not, it's very difficult to hear him because he's not speaking into the microphone. I apologize. Maybe somebody can give him a mic.
Okay.
I want to, okay, thank you. But questions, we said questions, not speeches. Thank you very much. Well, you're asking the question, why do people vote the way they vote? The same with elections. How you change the votes of people. Do I have an hour or two to answer you? 3 seconds. Also in our researches, you see a support of two states. I can make it difficult that when we ask about a Palestinian state, then the support goes down. Even more than what you said. No, he said 80%. No, he didn't. Anyway, what we found is a bit different. When we talk about a Palestinian state, not about separation, there's decline because there's a psychological aspect. But I want to draw your attention to the fact that in the 80s, the percentage of support was 20% supported a Palestinian state. Look at what's happening in the last decade. We see a rise. 2012 was the peak of 70%, and we see some sort of a gradual decline against two states in all sorts of variations. Namely, in that respect, the plan came in the right time, because if you look well, you'll see that this gradual decline, and there's a study that is going to be published now, I'll see another decline. The public still supports separation, but it's already going towards opposition to all sorts of ideas regarding the separation. Hello, good evening. My name is Smadja. I'm an independent person dealing with all these issues of new anti-Semitism in the French internet. I listened very careful to the plan and the outline. Maybe it's a new approach, but there's one point that I think I didn't hear anything about, and that is the educational, psychological area of this hate that exists in the public, in the Palestinian youth, how do you think, whatever happens, the ways that you're going to create, how do you think you're going to relate to change this state of mind among the young Palestinians? I'll try. I do not do away with the part that the institutions of the Palestinians that are involved in education, like the UNRWA schools, they inculcate narratives that are anti-Jewish and anti-Israelis, and of course anti-Zionist. We know, they admit it. But beyond that, I think that Israel shouldn't, or the Israelis shouldn't ignore dynamics and reality that feeds that hate on a daily basis. Children in the West Bank who go and circumvent buses, they know the IDF on the area. Children in Gaza, even if they haven't met, but they meet Israelis, soldiers, they know Israel through the constraints and the roadblocks that they have in the Gaza Strip. I don't want to go into the discussion whether the security needs are there or not, but Israel is reflected in the eyes of a Palestinian in such a way that there's no wonder that the anti-Israeli sentiments and the narratives of against the occupation are so deep. And also, I think that here we have to take into account something else that supports the rationale of this plan that you just saw. These things are not going to be changed overnight because the state of Israel has to take that into account. Even if we do take that track or the outline that was presented to us, but we have no way to act wisely without acknowledging this security and political and territorial reality. And that, of course, incites all these emotions that make it difficult for them to embark upon a new way, for both sides, maybe. I just want to ask you, and Sima and Oded, because the arguments here, MK Lapid spoke about the regional issue, and also Minister Bennett said that the international community is going to support us for 10 seconds and then they'll stop. So, Sima, this regional arrangements, for quite a few years we were told that all we need is to make an arrangement with the Saudis. They love our technology and other countries, and eventually they're going to bring us the Palestinians. And just as was said, these things were checked, were tested. It's not emotions. They were tested by American factors that the Institute asked to go to Saudi Arabia and to the Emirates and to Bahrain and talk to the leaders, not with the public, not with journalists, with the leaders, to hear whether there's any chance whatsoever to do anything preliminary to an Israeli-Palestinian negotiations. First, make peace with them first, and then the Palestinians will understand that their time works against them, and they'll come to the table. There's no such animal, and I'm sorry to disappoint you. I would be very happy if the Saudis would be willing to open the market for Israeli buyers and flights over Saudi Arabia. I want to remind you that the Indian company was allowed to fly above its territory, but they will never let El Al do it until there's a Palestinian-Israeli dialogue. So we've been talking about the Arab Street, but we don't really understand it. The Arab Street decided against Mubarak and against Gaddafi. Until today, the Arab Street for 8 years is fighting after 500,000 killed in Syria. There is an Arab street And these people will not put their fate vis-à-vis the Arab street so that the Israeli state will have an agreement with the Saudis instead of the Palestinians. No doubt that they want relations with Israel, and that's the good story. They are interested with a dialogue with Israel, and I can tell you that in COVID talks or in conferences all the time they keep telling us, why don't you finish your problem with the Palestinians? There's so many things we can do together. That's why I suggest not to take this story face value, that you can do anything with them, we can, but with the Palestinians, but they're essential to a negotiation with the Palestinians. They can give legitimacy, they can help us with security issues, and definitely with everything that has to do with the economy.
I want to talk about a historical precedent. After the Gulf War, 1991, the United States put together the Madrid Convention, and from that, five task groups came out. Of them, that was on economics, and perhaps from the Madrid Convention and the task forces, something developed. The Oslo Agreement, the Oslo process. And the State of Israel did not undertake to leave Jerusalem or to return to the 67 borders. Therefore, this statement needs some fine-tuning, meaning the Arab countries, those who would be important for supporting the process between Israel and the Palestinians, will actually meet U.S. demands, will meet the interim steps. If the State of Israel were to adopt even part of the plan proposed this afternoon, I have no doubt in my mind that that would be sufficient in order to create the regional summit and the regional process during which, or as part of which, the Arab countries will support this process. And that brings me back, and with that I will end, to the role played by the United States. What happened not only during Trump's current term in office, but beforehand, during Bush's administration and Obama's administration, there was a huge drop in the United States' role as mediator, and therefore what could be done after the 1991 Gulf War is not possible now. In those tools that have disappeared, particularly in this, again, drop in status of the United States as a mediator. And that is one of the things that is causing the current state of affairs, as it is described both in the INSS project and in the discussion that followed it. Shlomo, the last question to you, and with that we will end. To what extent will we be able to get the Palestinians Authority on board to cooperate with the implementation of this line? That depends on the level of cooperation we expect from them. If we expect cooperation on a level of a ceremony on a lawn where they accept this program and this outline and sign it, of course there's no chance of that happening, because they have a principal problem with interim transitional agreements and processes. They have been traumatized, as we have been traumatized by the Oslo process, and to them the Oslo process only made their situation worse rather than better. And therefore, to sign formally in this great ceremony, they will only be willing to do that with a comprehensive agreement. However, we can reach understandings with them on cooperating with making these steps that we can convince them are good for them. And all in all, overall, this plan, most of the steps proposed here are good for the Palestinians. The fact that a significant, considerable percentage of Area C is given to them for their use, to develop infrastructure, for commercial projects for construction. That's good for them, and they will be willing to cooperate in such a step, provided that they will not be forced to say, this is a plan that we accept. Okay, thank you very much to all team members.